The book was written by Aric, McBay, Lierre, Keith, and I. They were the primary authors, and it emerges out of a conversation we had years and years ago in a where we were thinking, okay, what would be an actual strategy that could work? Because so many people over the years, I write Endgame, I write all these books, and people come up and say, so what do you want us to do? And I want you to think for yourself. I want all this, but we don't have. Strategic thinking has gone entirely out of the environmental movement. There is no strategic thinking, and part of the reason there's no strategic thinking is because most of the members of it don't question capitalism. And if you don't question capitalism, and if you don't question civilization, you can't really have a strategy because you don't have the framing conditions disallow you from solving the problem. If you don't question capitalism, if you want capitalism, it's like when people say, okay, how can we stop global warming? What they really ask is, how can we stop global warming without stopping the burning of oil and gas? And the answer is you can't. And so you can't really develop an effective strategy based on framing conditions that disallow solving the problem. And so we thought, okay, let's go ahead and toss out those framing conditions and say, if we really want a strategy to save this planet, what do we want to do? And what would that strategy look like? And we're going to forget whether it would be popular, we're going to forget everything else, and then we're going to say, what would the strategy be? And then after that, we're going to talk about how resistance movements have worked historically, how, we studied the IRA pretty extensively, the IRB, the IRA, the Gaelic literature revival. How did the above ground and below ground work together? How was the underground organized? How was the above ground organized? What did they do right? What did they do wrong? And then we look at other resistance movements. We look at the suffragist movement. We look at the abolition movement. What did they do right? What did they do wrong? We look at resistance movements in World War II. We look at men, the movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta. They started off completely nonviolent in a previous incarnation with Ken Saro-Wiwa and others, and they tried protesting because the Niger Delta is the largest wetland in the world, really. And it's now more accurately called a sludge land because of oil. And the people there have been protesting against it for years. It led to the murder/execution of Ken Saro-Wiwa and 8 other leaders. And if you want to really radicalize a movement, if you're a government, what you do is kill the leaders, and the next generation is going to be very militantized. And MEND now has been able to stop oil output in the Niger Delta by up to 30%. And they've done so using sabotage and kidnappings. And they're very well respected locally. They don't commit atrocities. They've studied the history of resistance movements. So we talk about all that. And we talk about, once again, how resistance movements are organized. We talk about security culture. We talk about various paths that the world will take. What will happen to the world if we do nothing? What will happen to the world if we do a limited response? What would happen to the world if we did all-out ecological decisive warfare, where we or decisive ecological warfare, where we do all-out attacks on infrastructures and industrial infrastructures? Because if space aliens came down from outer space and they were systematically deforesting the continent, the planet, and they were changing the climate and rendering it uninhabitable, we would develop serious resistance movements. So that's what that book is really about. And in the workshops, we run people through, we talk about, we basically try to condense the thing into a weekend. And there are various discussions where Lierre will talk about the difference between liberal and radical, where liberal believes that the basic unit of society is the individual, and radical believes that the basic unit of society is the class. And for a liberal, they don't understand. I mean, that's where you get a lot of sort of personal lifestyle actions or personal education, as opposed to dismantling systems of power. Here's a great line from Lierre that really sums that up, which is, the task of an activist is not to navigate systems of repressive authority with as much integrity as possible. The task of an activist is to confront and take down systems of repressive authority. And that's really the difference between a liberal and a radical right there. So there's those discussions. There's discussions of organization, discussions of security culture, and then the heart of it is a game we play in the middle of Saturday afternoon. And the game is Omniv has taken over this country, Feralia, and people in the workshop participants are going to be different parts of a Feralian resistance, and they can have 6 different groups. And the first group is those who are attempting to change minds, I believe. The second one is building alternatives, like alternative schools or whatever. The third one is lobbying the government. The fourth one is the 4, 5, and 6 are acting underground, and 4 is individuals, 5 is small cells, and 6 is paramilitary organizations. And then Aric is the head of Omniv, and he gets to respond, like, if people, in this last one we did, there was a paramilitary organization early on in the resistance tried to take over a watershed, and Aric, as head of Omniv, basically said, "You're all dead. You know, we fly in 10,000 military, and by the end of the weekend, you're all dead." Lierre is the natural world, and after what everybody does, after every round, she says, "Okay, so there's toxins are up, carbon is up, and human population is up. Species diversity is down. Oceans are in worse shape, and forests are in worse shape." And so somebody could do this really groovy school, and they do this great school. They're going to educate the children, and they're going to do this wonderful thing. There's nothing wrong with that, but species diversity is still down. Forests are still down. Oceans are still down. Toxins are still up, et cetera, because it doesn't make any difference in the real world. Almost everything that people do doesn't make any difference in the real physical world, which mirrors our environmental crisis. And then I'm Joe Public, and basically I sit there and act contemptuous of everyone, and also pretty stupid. And so, like, before the first person got up to give their talk about what they were going to do, I said, "I'm sorry, I got to get ready," and then I put in earplugs. And later on, somebody was talking about something, and the whole time they're talking, I'm just surfing the internet. You know, I'm acting as people in this culture do. And a couple things come out of it that are pretty important. One is that people get really, really frustrated because no matter what they do, for the most part, early on in the game, species diversity keeps going down, forest diversity goes down, and so on and so on. And they get really frustrated and angry, but we say, look around, this is what's happening. You know, if you make a really cool puppet and if you hang a banner from a bridge, you know, species diversity still goes down. And then also they get really frustrated because I'm basically such an ass through all this. But what they finally get is that so long as I'm gaining privilege from Omniv, I'm not going to listen to a word they say. And this is how it works in real life with resistance movements. So long as there are those who are gaining this privilege, they're not going to be accessible. So anyway, that's what DGR is as a book. And we lay out, it's actually also a movement. And there are DGR groups forming all over the country, and internationally too. The book isn't even out. It's not coming out for another few weeks, and there's already this, there's a movement forming around it. Because what it does, I mean, so many people say this is very scary, it's terrifying, but it's a breath of fresh air because finally somebody is taking this crisis for as serious as it is, and is ready to start fighting back.